14 and more on the way. How's everyone doing today? I see some pensiveness. I see some relaxation. A lot of friendly faces. Johnny, nice to see you again. Adrian, nice to actually see you for the first time, my friend. David, nice to see you again. Norvald, nice to see you again too. Kyle, Leona, Ben, Ella, Debbie, Andy, what's going on? Marcus, nice to see you. Hey, there's Keith. How you doing, man? Valerie? Excellent. Kelly, Laura? All right. So usually, traditionally, satsang begins with meditation or chanting, and then it usually transitions into something of a talk. Since I really do value your questions, we won't do too much of that, but we can kind of step into some things. So if you will just kind of take a step with me, maybe close your eyes for the moment, and just allow yourself to open up and see if you can detect any kind of sensation in the emotional space of your body, from your throat down to below the navel. And if the sensation is subtle, that's fine. If it's strong, that's fine. See if you can embody that sensation as entirely as possible without attempting to change it, without the need to resist, without the need to avoid. And just rest with that sensation rather, so fully that it begins to take you. Maybe it's moving somewhere. Maybe it's expanding. Maybe it's contracting. Maybe you can feel it somewhere other than inside the body space. Just allow yourself to rest with that vibratory sensation. Maybe it's a fluttering or a whirling. Maybe it has a sparkling effect or something of a flowing effect. This is your baseline. This is your standard to check in with that space. And from here, see if you can allow spontaneity. This is the space of intuition. This is the space of creative expression. This is the space of curiosity. This is the space of courage. See if you can tap into that space and allow everything to show up in a very immediate way. And notice thoughts at the same time. Just notice them, like droplets of water falling from the tip of a leaf right back into the pond below. And when that droplet of water makes contact with the pond below, it is no longer discernible as anything separate. It is the pond. Maybe that droplet of water was always the pond, and the apparent form that it took was still ultimately a form of emptiness. This is the sensational space as well. These are thoughts. They are the same. Let's just play a quick little game. Right here, right now, while on mute, pick a color and say it out loud right now. First color that comes to mind. Excellent. This is immediacy. This is spontaneity. It is just what comes up without orientation, without a cause, without an effect. And so from here, as we start to get into questions, allow the questions to come up in the same manner. Even if you feel like there's been an agenda and the mind has been telling you that there's something you really need to know, see if you can allow yourself to ask these questions and share in a very spontaneous and immediate way. And you just might find that you've always known something that the mind is telling you that you couldn't know, in a way that the mind cannot wrap. And let's just kind of go on this exploration together. And thank you so much for sharing this space with me today, right here, right now. Sangha can have a very sacred feel to it, but that doesn't mean that it has any meaning at all. It just is something that's co-created spontaneously together here and now. And a quick reminder, there is nothing I can teach you that you don't know. There's nothing that can be given that you don't already have. This is mutual. This is a resonant environment where we come together to explore a wisdom that is so common, it is within every fractal of reality. So, thanks for joining me. All right, as we move forward, hopefully most of you, since the pandemic, are probably pretty aware of how to use Zoom. To ask questions, you can just go ahead and go down to reactions, and you can raise hands and things like that. And once you raise a hand, I will call on you. You can unmute yourself and we will begin. And it seems like everyone is almost already here. So whoever has a question or anything you'd like to share, we'll go ahead and go there. All right, we'll start with Paul. He was the first to raise his hand. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Josh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what comes up is feeling like this has been a little bit of a recurring theme. I think maybe this is, I've heard you talk a little bit and Angelo talk about how things don't always follow kind of a linear path.
Sure.
And for me, it's felt like what really opened up for me pretty quickly was the body. And so when I do inquiry, I guess I would say that my attention settles quite often in bodily sensation. And there's clearly nothing wrong with that. But I guess, like it feels like I can't really separate my attention from sensation really. I mean, even like with my eyes closed, just like the visual experience or sensation in my body, like I've heard, I think maybe, I don't remember if it was you or Angelo, talk about how one way to go about inquiry is basically to shut off the sense gates. But I really can't, I don't think I can, I'm not sure I can do that fully. And I'm not sure it really matters either. I don't think it actually matters, but that's kind of what comes up. If you could just, you talk a lot about sensations and how, of course, there's nothing to avoid there. But I think what happens sometimes when I get a little bit of mental chatter and it's sort of subconscious, it's like, sort of like a hesitation tone of like, oh, but is recognizing the sensation in a sense, labeling it. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah, it's a good question. There definitely is an approach where we can shut off the sense gates and move into something that's more akin to awareness. For most people, that's not a very natural practice, but it is something that you can practice if it feels intuitive. If not, if you're moving into sensation, see if you can pay attention to the thoughts that are arising. Are there still low-level thoughts that you can maybe even sense? You don't need to actually know the content. You just need to be aware that there may be thoughts. For a lot of people, when stepping into sensation early on, there are low-level thoughts that they don't seem to consciously recognize. And the more you allow yourself to peel the layers of sensation, the more you begin to see that there's subconscious or low-level thoughts that get almost regurgitated into the conscious mind. So to share a story that may have been brought up before, a couple of weeks ago I was working with a woman who we were working on sensations, and that was definitely a space of avoidance for her. And as she began to allow herself to feel those sensations, she spontaneously broke into pretty deep sobbing. And after about maybe a minute and a half of just digging into that sensation, being completely engaged and immersed in that sensation, a belief got regurgitated into the conscious mind, and she suddenly said, "I'm ugly." And then she paused for a second and she looked up as if she could see the belief in this space, and then began to spontaneously burst into laughter, because she's objectively a very attractive woman, and she recognized in that instant that every action she had taken in her life, the way she dressed, the car that she drove, the men that she dated, the house, the career, everything was oriented around compensating for the belief that she was ugly. And so for you, I would just point to, what is it in the sensation that still seems like it has a boundary? Spending time in sensation is one thing. Now, how much further can you zoom in? Can you find the boundary of what appears to be a sensation between that and another sensation or space of emptiness? Go to that boundary, go to the space of emptiness, let's say. Sit there for a second, then move back into the sensation and keep oscillating gently until you can find a very fine line of a boundary. And then maybe you can't find a boundary. And then from there, you find you might not even have a perception of where it is in the body. You might not have a perception of the body at all. All of a sudden, you find yourself kind of taken away, and you have forgotten even thoughts, and you find yourself in a space of complete awareness. Sometimes there is fixation to sensation, but it's still going to be oriented around thought, maybe thoughts that aren't very conscious. So play with that a little bit more, because if sensation opened up early for you, it's not very likely to become a fixation on its own. It must be accompanied by thought to become a boundary or a blockade or a fixation. So give that a shot. See what shows up there.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Secondarily, just one more thing. When it comes to sensations, a metaphor we can use is, imagine your shoes are on fire or your feet are on fire, and see if there's a sense of, when that sensation arises, a sense of pushing back or wanting to move away from it, even if it's just really quickly. Because really what's happening when it comes to thought is it definitely requires us to enter into a state of reactivity for it to become sticky. So if a sensation arises and you have a subtle sense of reactivity, you can definitely guarantee a thought is there. And as I pointed to before, the content isn't really important. It's just more around the lines of being able to recognize it as it is. That's all. See it very clearly. And so when the feet are on fire, if we allow that fire to consume the body, thus consume the room, thus consume the universe, there's only that one sensation. And if everything in this universe is just that one sensation, where are you? Where is the sensation? You can play with that a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then, check back in. I would love to hear more about how that exploration goes, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. All right, Adrian, go for it.
Hey, Josh. Hey, everyone. So what's coming up here today and even right now is a lot of fear. So I've been sitting with fear, the emotion of fear. And it's very energetic. So the body's very vibratory. there's moments where the body's just moving rapidly on its own. And so being with sensation sometimes feels like I'm sort of a puppet, and I'm allowing energy to just move me. And that's been one version of being with it. But I'm feeling like there's still something, like this really subtle avoidance of something. It's almost like fear of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious of like how to locate that, if it's at all separate. Like, I don't know, but it feels like very much there's a surrender to the sensational field, but it's like there's a part of the experience that still feels like avoidance, and I don't know how to spot that or how to see it. Sometimes the mind's trying to label and analyze what the fear is about. There's some inquiry around that, like, is this fear of this or that? Sometimes there's just letting go of thoughts and just being with the senses. But I think I feel there's like a fear of fear coming up.
Yeah, that's really common. Fear tends to be a very meta experience. People tend to step into fear, then develop a fear of that fear, and then develop a fear of that fear. And really, to be really direct with you, the only way to do this is layer by layer by layer. There's no way to pierce directly to the cause or whatever the cause seems to be. Really watch those thoughts that are looking for an origin or a cause. That's just narrative. That's just thought. It's actually not going to help at all. The mind doesn't need to be a part of this at all. If you do step into that sense of fear without thought and it's energetic, whenever it seems to be resistance, that's all there is. And you sit entirely in the resistance. I think you'll find that resistance and fear are akin to each other. Sometimes we step into resistance and there's a sense, well, I've got to move away from this resistance, or I've got to do something about this resistance. And that just becomes another layer of resistance. So fearing the fear and resisting the resistance are still going to be associated with some kind of belief or thought. Really, though, here's the best part, my friend. You're getting in contact with the no. And the no is really where the fundamental identity lies. And the no is basically, I like this, I don't like that. The no is what we reject, and what we reject is what we don't accept. That's where we don't let go. That's where we don't allow. That's where the effort against reality as it is taking place. So keep your finger on the pulse of whatever seems to be fear all the time. Every single moment of every single day. And maybe that takes you into an energetic space that feels like, and the thought will likely accompany this is going to kill me. This is too much. I can't handle this. That is the sweet spot, because that's exactly where the identity at its most fundamental level is hiding. And really, all we're doing here is revealing things as they are, including identity. And the paradox shows, as mentioned before, that when we see identity for what it truly is, laid naked and bare, we see that there's nothing there at all. So there might be just a subtle reactive behavior or resistance to the fact that it feels like it's going to be too much. You got to let it take you. And if you can give yourself the time and the space in a practical sense for that as often as possible, you are likely to continue delving a little bit deeper. So we can create a metaphor here. Imagine you have a sticky ball of something, and that's fear. And the first time you touch it with your fingertip, and it's kind of sticky as you pull your finger away. The second time you move in, you put your whole hand on it, and then you put your whole hand inside, and then you put your whole arm inside. And over time, you allow yourself to go deeper and deeper and deeper until there is nothing but fear. And if there is nothing but fear, what else is there? It's not what the thoughts are telling you, that's for sure. So just be really careful of that narrative that wants to figure out where it comes from, how it's connected to your life, because all that is distraction. And I promise you this, if you already feel it and you know it, explore it in a way that you don't know. What don't I know about this? And that will prevent it from holding into a consistent experience. And the best part is you move from that layer of fear into something else. And ultimately, you'll probably find that there's two very distinct forms of fear. There's this fear of the known, this expectation or anticipation of something that will happen. That's very much associated with thought. And there's this fear of the unknown. As thoroughly as we can stay in that space of fear of the unknown, we start to acclimate to the fact that there's nothing to fear about the unknown because it's unknown. And the most unknown experience when it comes to the mind is always the present moment. It cannot be oriented to at all. And so the future isn't unknown. The future has a sense of being known because of how the identity functions with positioning itself in the past and projecting into the future. The present is unknown. And the more you are in completely immersed and engaged in that sensory space during meditation and the rest of your existence, what is it now? It's not what you thought it was, that's for sure.
That's great.
I think you're doing great stuff though. So yeah, layer by layer, all the way. And you know, as mentioned before, this can be done in baby steps, and that can be really useful too. You don't have to leap, but there will be a point where it will lead towards something that is disorienting or destabilizing to some degree. But that's where the big show tends to occur. I can promise you this, every single person listening today, there is no decrease, there is no increase. You will lose nothing. The external world seems to continue as is. The difference is that when we chop wood and carry water before awakening, it's a struggle, it's a slog. But when we chop wood, carry water afterward, it's effortless and free and liberated. And really, there's only one way to know. You got this.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. All right, we have Johnny.
I saw two other hands up first. I think you should go to them and before you go to me.
I don't know. I just see what's on the screen.
Yeah, I don't want to take anyone's spot. So I think Lisette and Andy were up first. I think you should answer them.
If you want to pass it off, go for it.
I can come back later.
Okay. Who would like to go? Lisette, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Josh. Hi, everybody.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. I've been enjoying your videos with Angelo and Chad and the other guy. I forgot. But yeah, it was so much fun. So yeah, I wanted to talk about something that I feel that I've been struggling with. Like it's kind of like maybe one of the things that keeps me stuck, because I sometimes feel stuck, and it's the struggle with time. It's like I feel that, I mean, I know all that thing about time being an illusion, and like, I mean, like intellectually I kind of grasp that, like in the absolute, but in the real world, like in our human existence, I feel that it's so hard to function thinking that time is an illusion. I mean, we're like the mouse on the wheel. Sometimes feels like that, like the 24-hour clock. You have this limited space to do whatever you want to do during the day. And something that is related to that Angelo has talked about a lot is like the having competing agendas, and I feel that's to me, that's so related to with the thing about struggling, the thing not having enough time, and the competing agendas of trying to do, like my responsibilities with my children, my family, doing like working on this stuff, like awakening, reading, watching videos, working on meditation, and dedicating some time to do things that I enjoy doing, like hobbies, So yeah, how I don't know how can I approach that and apply what I know intellectually to that to my day-to-day life, kind of like you mentioned about chopping wood and carrying water. What you just said, I want to be able to keep chopping wood and carrying water without feeling the struggle with time,
Life is the only teacher here. There is no two worlds. There is not a spiritual world and there is not a practical world. It's just one. And what tends to happen is when we conceptualize that spirituality has something that's separate from this world, we start to enter into a space of negotiation, and we start to enter into a space of competing agenda. If spirituality, because spirituality doesn't mean anything. It's such a meaningless term. It's just a conceptualization of this as it is. Every single moment, every single thing is this. So you actually don't have to do anything. You don't even have to create time in this relative life, this relative existence that you have. The only thing that needs to be brought is full awareness and intention at all moments, at the entire moment of the present, with everything that's being done. Pay attention to when you move into a pure conceptual space around your kids, around your family, around your job. That is where the agenda is taking place. That's the negotiation. Can you have your finger on the pulse of presence and thisness at all times? And I understand that in a relative sense, with meditation and things like that, there does seem to be a necessity to have space and time. Ultimately, though, because of the conceptualization, your mind is telling you, if I don't have enough relative time, this can't happen. I just don't have the time to do this. Frankly, that's bullshit. But that's how the mind works. It wants to continue to get you to react to thoughts, and it wants to insert doubt on a regular basis. Anything it can do to prevent you from exploring the thing that it can never know, which is this, right here, right now, all the time. So, meditation happens with eyes open. Natural meditation is just existing in the world, and there's very small things you can do. This practice that's been come up with a while ago, it sounds tedious at first, but it becomes pretty palpable. Every single thought is a cue to feel. Every single thought at every point in the day, not just during meditation or just during a break at work. Every single thought all day long is a cue to feel, and feeling is our best compass of presence. And what will eventually happen is you will have such a strong sense of awareness of this that every single experience in the now, no matter what it is, with your family, with your job, with kids, driving, whatever, will be completely saturated in presence. So don't be fooled by the doubt, because the doubt's saying you need more time.
Well, it's still like, I try sometimes. It's just, you look at the clock, because you have to. It's like, you have a whatever activity plan, like, and it's just, I guess, it's like, because every time you remind yourself of the 24-hour time, it's like the thoughts come back to tell you, like, you have this much left. So, and it's like, there's no denial in that, how can you're gonna tell people, like, like, oh no, there's no time, like, and then you don't go to appointments or meetings or whatever, or like, like, or you don't sleep because there's no time, and then you're tired, and like, I tend to stay awake late because I just want to keep doing things that I enjoy, and that time of the day I have like peace and no interruptions. So it's tempting, but then next day, I feel tired, of course, so it's like.
Yeah, I mean, truly though, where is the negotiation taking place where you must have a separation from the rest of life to have these enjoyable moments? That's a negotiation happening. This is really chop wood, carry water. Nothing actually externally needs to change at all. And another thing you can look into is, where are the have-tos showing up? I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. That is just the effort against things as they are. You will find that you can be just as relatively productive while also being completely engaged. It's like a third space. But the way duality wants to play itself out is say, well, you have to have time for work and family, and you have to have this other time for just yourself. And in a relative sense, there's some truth to that, but it's also primarily a dual experience. What about the space between? What about the moments that you're walking from room to room? There's infinite time there. Can you be so engaged in those experiences that it just carries moment to moment to moment until there's no chain of moments any longer? That's the practice. It's bringing it closer to home all the time. And I think what you'll find is, it doesn't really matter how much relative time you have at all. It's always right here, right now. It can't be found anywhere else. There is no sanctuary. It's here. It's right here. It's touching your nose. Can you feel it? You're breathing it right now. Can you feel it? Stay in that space. Feel, feel, feel. That's your compass. And as Paul brought up earlier in his question, it's not an endpoint, but it is a beautiful transitionary space that's naturally built in. Feel all the time. Can you feel your heart beating in your earlobe? Just every once in a while, let intuition just like check in like that. What do the tip of my toes feel like in this instant? And just be immersed in it. 5 seconds becomes an eternity. All the time, every moment. There is never a moment where you are disconnected from the now. And you'll see the negotiation doesn't have to take place, and there is no such thing as a competing agenda. There's just an agenda, and that's thought. It's just thought. Yeah, 24 hours in a day, but what does that even really mean? Have you ever had that experience when you were younger? Time flies when you're having fun. It's impossible to have a constant perception of time without thought, but you will find that it works out perfectly and you enter into a state of trust. You don't miss anything. Your relative life does not fall apart. There is no decrease. It's shocking how perfect this already is. I promise. Experiment a little bit, play a little bit, see what happens. And I'd love to hear more.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Nice to see you. Andy, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, you guys. This is my first satsang, and thank you all for your questions so far. It's amazing how your questions are my questions.
Beautiful.
So I'm learning so much, and thank you, Josh, for clarifying. Already a little bit more clarity.
Beautiful.
So I've been, unpeeling these layers for years now, or attempting to, with a little bit more progress than usual. Just past couple of weeks, when for some reason the seeking energy kind of tapped back in, and I contacted you, Josh, and but I remember sitting in meditation a couple weeks ago, and it seemed like there was a really big dissolution of the me, the I am, I think, and it seemed like there was no time, no space, no suffering. It seemed perfect. It seemed like it was the longest glimpse I've had into whatever that space that was. Very blissful. But for some reason, my mind always wants to compare that, which is already perfect. It's like, I can sit here forever, right? But when I come back, okay, it always wants to compare to previous psychedelic trips I've had where I've experienced the divine or God or infinite. And it never seems quite as powerful as that. It seems like those states that I've meditated on psychedelics, and it just seems to blast through that much more infinitely. And it's like that which is beyond even itself. And my mind keeps seeking that. So I keep wondering, like, is this it? Is this really it? And that's the frenzy that I'm going through right now. It's like, is that state that I set, like, just this, I can probably, I can tap into it, glimpse it, and I'm getting more glimpses. But the mind keeps going, but it's not that divine or that God that I experienced, that level that I experienced in previous experiences. So I just wanted to see what insight you have on that.
This is classic mind basically saying you can't do this on your own. What would you do without me? It's just a doubt. What would you do without me? That assessment that you're having, can you have any certainty that those experiences are exactly the way the mind is reminding you? Can you have actually any certainty that those memories are accurate at all?
Fair.
This
Very
is
fair.
This is the way the mind functions, my friend. It's going to embellish memory. It's going to embellish memory of sensation and say, nah, you need some help. You need assistance. You can't do this alone. What would you do without me? That's all it is. It's just doubt. Here's one thing I can say. Let every experience be what it is, and it's going to be unique no matter what. And let it take you. You will be absolutely shocked at how profound this becomes on its own. But that assessment, the one who's evaluating, the one who's comparing, you're never going to reach satisfaction there. It's doing that for a reason. If it keeps you in that space, you don't continue exploring. You don't continue examining. You keep saying, I guess I got to have drugs for this, or I can't get there on my own. What would I do without you? Tricky bastard.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's going to be subtle until it is profound. Let it be subtle. Sometimes the experience is like being right on the cusp of a sneeze, but you don't get that sneeze. What's that? Just that. Sit there until that profundity just blows the self obliteration. This is annihilation. Because there's a sense of discomfort in the subtlety. The mind prefers duality because they are bold experiences.
Right.
Because they're so focused, they're blocking everything else out. The nature of this reality is actually quite subtle and quite profound.
It's so interesting. Like in that meditation I'm referring to, there was no seeking whatsoever. It was perfect. But now that I'm talking to you, it's like, yeah, but why am I localized in this reality, in this body, in this physical, what seemingly physical reality, you know? And I've experienced so many realities. So it's exactly what you're saying. It's
just part of the game, you know? And this is how the layers tend to peel. It becomes, it's completely opaque at first, and then the opaqueness or the opacity begins to diminish, and then it's translucent, and then it's completely transparent, and then it is utterly, viscerally clear. So, that's what's happening. You're moving.
I'm glad that
opaque.
I'm glad that you were saying that there is a clarity, like there's a profound clarity, and that's reassuring. It's very reassuring.
There's no doubt about it. But it's not a clarity that can ever actually be oriented here. Even the words, the best we can do to describe it is really cheapening it quite a bit.
Right.
It can only be experienced firsthand. This is where the statement, there is no truth but your truth, just continuously examining that to make sure that it's true. And you find eventually, maybe there is no truth. Maybe there is nothing. But it doesn't show up as a thought.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good question. Thank you. All right, Johnny, go for it.
Hey, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, so I kind of have a question about like subject and object. Experientially, it's kind of weird because I feel like I don't have a choice, but there still feels like there's a self that's like against this no choice of everything that's just happening. I wonder if you have anything to say about that.
The paradox, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The acceptance of paradox is really paramount to all of this. It seems as if, and really, these are just words, so I'll do my best. It seems as if this reality is composed of a blinking reality of existence, non-existence, billions of times per second, and fractals of this experience of just paradox. It's almost as if we are straddling the edge of nothing and the Big Bang simultaneously. And we can never have just one experience or the other. It's happening simultaneously. So there's this relative reality of forms, this doing, the sense of agency, this choice, and there's this absolute reality that none of that exists at all. There's no choice. There's no form. It's all emptiness. And somehow those two realities coexist and they're not separate at all. It just seems that way. So when something feels like choice, see if you can get a little bit more present with that experience and see if there's a thought that's reflecting on that experience. It seems like our sense of agency is entirely dependent on reflecting on the experience. So we can ask ourselves 3 levels of inquiry. Does there need to be a thought before the experience? Does there need to be a thought during the experience? Does there need to be a thought after the experience? And I think what you'll find is there's probably a subtle level of thought after the experience that is giving you a sense that I'm making a choice. It's all about perception of time. Really it is. If perception of time says there's a past flowing into a present that will eventually flow into a future, that perception by itself will always impart a sense of agency. But if that all collapses into a present moment, it's impossible to distinguish if we are doing anything or if it is just being done.
Yeah, because I can't tell what's happening, and yet it doesn't feel like I'm disconnected. It's like a very,
Yeah,
it's like diligent, but at the same time free-flowing.
That's actually a beautiful way to put it, Johnny. In fact, I would still love to share the video of the first session we had because of some of the ways that you've worded these things. Absolutely. Full engagement is not disassociation. Duality, with the way the mind works, is we have an experience of engagement in a focused way or complete disassociation. We have an experience of seeking and driving with intention and ambition or complete complacency. It's those duality things playing themselves out. This is non-duality. Somehow complete diligence, somehow complete immersion and engagement, and yet not really being an agent at all. It's a paradox. It's kind of impossible to really understand here with this binary mind that must settle on one thing or another.
I guess
I think
last thing I
space.
Good. I think I'm gonna end what I say with since the last time we spoke. I feel like I'm at this. There's this. It's like nothing makes sense, but not like nothing makes sense as in I'm confused, but like nothing, like I'm trying to make sense of the word nothing, but not in the conventional, like there's nothing, but it's like nothing, but nothing makes sense now. It's like, oh, that's just it.
That's just it.
Really appreciate listening and talking to you.
There is a knowing and an understanding that can be felt, even if it's just never going to register here. I get you. I totally get you. Yeah, nothing makes sense. Nothing does make sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Great share. Thanks, Johnny. All right, let's go to Debbie. Go for it.
Hi. Everything everybody's asked has been relevant, like somebody else said. There's a really strong feeling of being stuck. There's a lot of emotion around today, so I don't really know what it's all about. I've been ill for about 2 years with long COVID, so I've got no job. I've been really housebound. And in a way, it's felt like a grace because, you know, that lady's talking about not having any time, and that's all I have. So there's been this ability to do, well, no choice really, but to do lots of sitting, being with, and it's been a ride. Most of the time I haven't had a clue what was going on. I think a bit like what happened to you. Things happened and I didn't really know what they were or why. And I stumbled onto Angelo a few months ago and started to kind of, he started describing my life to me. And when I did his online retreat, and I've never really done formal meditation. I found out that what I was doing was a lot of natural meditation, but I I'd come across Byron Katie, and then quite a long time later found out she described that as self-inquiry. Didn't know that that's what it was, but lots of stuff fell away and found this kind of peace, and say none of that was on purpose, if you like. And then after I did the online retreat, hugely energetic. I think I'd already spent lots of time in the body and in sensation, as you talk about a lot. It was really active at that time. Experiences like the other guy was saying, which I know you try it, you're aware of the call to them, but I know that that's something to try not to get stuck in. There was an evening where there was this. Somebody else, another teacher, said it was possibly or it sounded like a non-duality experience in this complete immersion in an intimacy with sound and seeing, and just it feels like I can't even talk about it or remember it. Like even the next morning, it's just falling away. It wasn't like other experiences where I could really sort of say to somebody there was this revelation or this moment. It was so I can't bring it back at all in any way, shape, or form. And since that, even though logically I know this isn't the case, there's a real feeling of, I don't really know how to put it, of being stuck, of that, all of that's gone. Does that, from being lots of activity and lots of experiences and lots of immersion and lots of, I think I touched on a lot of fear. I feel like there was a lot of being on the edge of something, and now it feels like I've kind of gone and that nothing's happening, and it feels a bit, I would say, nihilistic in a way. And I'd also happen to get this book by Bernadette, whose surname I can't remember, who talks about her experience of self, and some of that was really scary. So I don't know whether, I think it's probably just a self-imposed running backwards that's been going on over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it could be.
I'm not sure if there's a question in there.
There's something to say about the sense of going backwards, the sense of backsliding, the sense of turning the other direction. There is no wrong way to turn. In fact, Debbie, do me a favor. Take a step outside of this universe. Go for it. Can't be done. There is no wrong way. This is just why we call it the path. Because it is varied, it is unpredictable. The unpredictable nature of this is the essence. And so once the memory forms of this is what it was, and then there's that comparison, just like we had spoken about a little bit earlier with Andy, that is the essence of doubt. That is clouding what is happening now. That's all it is. This isn't that, and it should be that, is what's being said. As soon as that starts to take over, of course the feeling is going to be one of being stuck. It's going to be one of going backwards. It's going to be one of living in the proverbial desert, so to speak. So pay attention to the thoughts that are attempting to color a memory in a specific way. That memory of whatever those experiences were does not exist. All we really need to do is apply ourselves right here, right now. This is it. This is all there has been. This is it. Just like that. And then when there's no more referencing happening, what do you see now? Definitely won't feel stuck. But it's the reference itself that's creating a sense of this isn't the same. It's not good enough. And it's expecting, the mind is expecting some sort of consistency. That is actually the nature of a belief. That this happened before, and it's a permanent fixture and experience in this universe that is impermanent. Sometimes we're in the tide. Sometimes it's so subtle, it becomes a little bit more difficult to see. But if you always remain connected with that finger on the pulse, you will see it doesn't matter how it shows up. It's just as good as any other thing. Doesn't need to be anything else. But it will be thought-oriented, and it does sound like memory is being referenced as a point of, yeah, but remember that? You lost something. What can be lost? How can you go the wrong direction? How can you turn away from this? You're bathed in it. You're made of it. So anytime that seems to arise, just keep bringing it closer and closer to home. And if it's sensations, and that seems to be, start playing with the sound field, the visual field. Continue exploring every aspect of the 5 skandhas, the senses. And what you'll begin to have a sense of is it's always right on the periphery. It has this sense of subtlety. So using the visual field as an example, here in Colorado, we get some really beautiful stars at night. And sometimes you can see maybe 40 or 50 stars in a constellation. Yet if you look a little bit to the right or the left, in the very periphery of your vision, you see that there are thousands and thousands of other stars among that 50 star cluster. But when we look directly at it, for some reason, we can't see it, but we can see it out of the periphery of the eye. Here, it's paying attention to everything that's on the periphery. What's on the periphery of these sensations? What's on the periphery of this experience? What's always here? And maybe not in the same form, but something that we recognize regardless. It's the doubt machine doing what doubt does. And, this is also part of it too. Nothing wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. And I know sometimes the pointing is a little bit direct. So for everyone, none of you are doing anything wrong. There's no such thing. It's just the pointer is get a little bit closer to this. Bring it a little closer to home. And then pay attention to the thought. And really, every thought is a cue to step back into something present. And you might begin to see that even sensations begin to have a thought that accompanies them. Oh, I know this sensation, or I know where this goes. Oof. Knowledge is the death of curiosity. Knowledge is finite. Step into such a space of beginner's mind that there's no memory of anything, because that's all just made up anyway. Where could it have gone? This is also a potential pitfall with the term letting go, because letting go can give us a sense that something can go somewhere else. It's not really the case. Here's something that might be useful. Let it be. Let it be this way now. Now it's soft. Now it's spiky. Now it's apple. Now I'm bird. Now I'm sky. Now I'm nothing. Nothing. Everything. Just like that. Immediate. Here's a practice. Maybe this will be useful. Wake up in the morning. See, as soon as you open your eyes, what the first thing that can be noticed is. If it's sensation, be with that. If it's thought, let that be a cue to move into the sensational space. This is the exploration. The first thing is the only thing is everything. That's immediacy. There is nothing else. No reference of memory, nothing else. Maybe there's something there. Absolutely. You're fine. You're fine. Just be with it as it is. This is the tide. Sometimes there's a lot of water. Sometimes it's more dry. It's okay. It's going to continue moving and changing. There's nothing we can do about that. So, don't wait either. Be with it as it is. Great share though. Thank you. Nice to see you, Debbie. Oh, my friend John, how are you?
Gosh, I'm good. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. What's happening?
Oh, you touched on so much that resonated in the last questions, and thank you everyone for your questions. Those are, as everyone was saying, those are the questions that are here too. But to revisit something that you touched on in the last live feed that you did, you talked a little bit about how this can happen for some of us, this tendency of living in sort of a self-sacrificial way, where as soon as we encounter a perceived other in a certain situation, we immediately sort of forego the compassion that is our being. And we, at least in my case, what seems to happen is some sort of kind of chameleon style action where it really doesn't have anything to do with the other person, but there's some anticipation of, oh, how can I shift in a way that would be agreeable to this person, that would somehow avoid conflict that wouldn't even be there. It can happen with a friend, it can happen with a coworker, someone who would absolutely accept whatever's presenting here right now, right? But in emotion work, I noticed that. So I was wondering if you could offer any advice or encouragement in touching that a little more deeply.
There's some good stuff here. Let's start with this. There is no conflict out here. Conflict does not exist out here. Conflict is an interpretation of an interaction. If there is potential for conflict, the conflict is already present. It's like a superposition. It's a form of, let's just say, defensiveness. It seems like defensive, and look, even if it's subtle, it's worthy of looking at in this way. Defensiveness is the first act of hostility. And there's something else to point to, though. Truest nature is chameleon and changing. It's chameleon-like. In other words, if there wasn't a reason, if there wasn't a reference or an orientation around what seems to be a shift in energy and a shift of behavior, then that's natural. So the sense here is that there's something authentically occurring, and the mind is creating an overlay on top of it and saying, now there's got to be a reason for it. And there it is. It's a sense of consistency with something that cannot be consistent. It will be oriented around a belief that there is something with you that has to do this for others. And I think what you'll find is giving is an expression of pain sometimes. Sacrificial giving is an expression of pain. So to come into contact with that which seems to be emanating from wherever it seems to be showing up as pain, you will come in contact with that belief, and you will see that, yes, your energy can shift at any given moment, and that's fine, but does it need a reason why? Does it need orientation? The thing that's creating orientation is attempting to convince you that you're broken and that you're lacking. That's it. And it doesn't sound very heavy, actually. The best part about this is that kind of subtlety can be entertained in such a unique way. What if the next experience is you allow yourself to shift energy, but you don't have a reference of why? Sounds like there's something intuitive and natural happening, actually, because this is kind of how we all are. We shift and move according to the environment, but it doesn't have to have a reason. It's just a natural experience of being a human being. I think you have that. But as soon as you justify it, you're basically reifying a belief. Not you, but the mind is attempting to concretize, turn into concrete or solidify something that's not true. So that's it. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing actually wrong. It's just that thought. Recognize that thought, check in with the sensation that it seems to be associated with. Where's the problem?
Yeah.
And
yeah, thank you much. Yeah.
You're pure compassion, man. You're giving. But giving in a way that isn't oriented around protection, that is selfless giving. Giving in a way that's oriented around a sense of desire or protection here, that's an expression of pain. They're entirely a different experience. And then you find that there is no selfless giving that is self-sacrificial, because it is natural, effortless, spontaneous, and intuitive. But when there is a requirement or a have to there, that's pain. That's suffering. That's all it is. And now you might find that it's an overlay after the fact telling you why. Oh, in other words, it's just a thought. And if you let every thought move from form or emptiness to form right back to emptiness, let it just continue returning to emptiness and just exist as naturally and as effortlessly as possible, where's the problem? It becomes almost hilarious. So really, maybe nothing really changes externally, but the justification and the internal whatever orientation of that is gone. Ooh, that's liberation.
Yeah, thank you. As you're saying that, it's like in a flash, it's I'm reminded that these whatever it might be, whether it's a judgment or this framework that arises in thought, is always after. It's always or
Yeah.
the experience, So yeah, thank you.
So a good inquiry there is, I mean, does this need to be reflected upon at all?
Right.
And there's something, for human beings, when we create a lot of meaning, there's something about moving on and being in whatever space we're in that can create a little sense of, I don't know, abandonment for some people. That might be something to explore there too, because maybe there's a part of you saying, if I don't reflect on this, then maybe I'm guilty of abandoning that experience, of abandoning the meaning of that moment, so on and so forth. It can go to that depth, yet my sense is it's just a thought. It doesn't even really seem like it's so collected that it's, a heavy belief. And maybe there's a little belief there, but it doesn't seem very heavy. Yeah. Play with it. Can you let the moment go? Can you let the experience go? Or can you let it be? Yeah. Good question, though. Love it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, Nico, go for it.
Hello, everybody. I have a question that's come up. So I heard you guys talking about there is no end to awakening, yeah? Like to clean and purge and clean and purge. So I heard a lot of awakening people talking about this. There is no end to where this goes. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes. With the caveat of there is an end to efforting against reality as it is, but there is no end. We don't land on any platform as this, whatever this is, continues.
Because I thought that when all this is done, that's it. It's over.
Mm.
So that's not true then.
It doesn't seem to be true. It doesn't seem to be like we ever reach a place of end. And if we sit with that long enough, we don't really actually want to be done.
I do.
What we really want is to stop suffering.
I want to be done completely.
You want to be completely done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yeah.
You're done.
So then what's the awakening done?
So now that
there's such a thing.
Now that you're done, you just get to be.
Well, I want to get done, but I still have sensation.
What does done mean for you?
No thoughts, no emotions, no beliefs, no energetic stuckness, nothing. Just this and breath.
Okay.
Nothing.
You have that.
But most of the time I feel present, but there is no word, or I just enjoy listening to my breath because there is silence a lot. But it's just very nice.
Yeah, it can get a little tricky when we conceptualize a goal or an anticipated event. It's really never the way that we can imagine it at all. And so if we become really fixated on what that is or what that's supposed to be or what that's like, then when it's right in our face, we won't recognize it. Fixation becomes pretty quickly its own form of confirmation bias, which basically means we only see what we're willing to see. We only experience what we're willing to experience. Yet there is something beyond that, something completely unbound and transcendent, but it's not something we can get. It's already here.
No, it's here.
So to peel off the layers, one by one, we'll feel like there's a sense of progress, but be careful about becoming fixated about that too, because in reality, and especially this absolute reality, there is no progress. We're not attaining anything. We're not achieving anything. We're not adding anything. We're realizing this as it is. So whatever truth seems to be in this moment, examine that regularly. Just like that. Because this is all there is. There is no future event. That's just a thought.
No.
So how could you not have that now? Or not have it? How could you not have nothing? You'll find that the only obscuration from here is just going to be objects of thought. These artifacts, these momentary glimpses of form that return right back into emptiness or formlessness. We could play a quick game and say, maybe the body is like an antenna, and the body's interpretation of whatever this vibratory universe, energetic universe seems to be, it reveals itself as sensation. And the way that the mind interprets it is through thought. The one thing that seems starkly different between those two experiences is that thought takes a little while to form. In other words, by the time thought is recognized, it's already positioned in the past. The past. It's already reflective. It's already a mirror of something that isn't actually direct. Strange. But then as we settle with that, it's not that we want to reject thoughts or thoughts don't belong. It's that we just aren't thoughts. And then we are. And then we're not. It's a tricky paradox. Ultimately, though, the best way to point to this is pretty much something that can be felt. It's really the only way to describe this, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a body sensation. But we start there. It's something that's felt. It's like consciousness, or this, what seems to be like this universal intelligence is, it has a sense of being felt, but not necessarily in a sensation. And it's a knowing that doesn't really apply itself into conscious thought, cause and effect thought. Yet it is something that we all inherently know. Now, to get in touch with that is the path. That's what the path is. To know it. To know that we 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 know. Without reference, without separation, without reflection. Just is.
Okay. Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Another one, quick. So I can feel that there is an identity here, the me. I don't have a past per se anymore, but I do have the identity. Is the identity connected with the sensation? Like how, if I want to differentiate between consciousness and identity, or can I do that? Is there some kind of recipe to know the difference?
Yeah, I mean, these are just words, but maybe there's a clue here. Maybe this will resonate. Thought seems to be that which is attempting to create reference. It's basically a forced separation of all that is. And then beliefs are a construct of those thoughts that are brought up on a repetitive basis, giving a sense of something that remains permanent or consistent. And then identity is a construct based on beliefs that gives us a sense of something consistent, a center of the universe, a singular center of attention. So if we look at how thoughts are putting effort in forcing separation, and beliefs are forcing a sense of consistency in a transitory, ever-changing universe, and that identity is creating a sense of singularity and in a non-singular universe, all of those particular things right there are about effort against. Every interpretation is an effort. Every effort is a motion from stillness, and every motion from stillness is an act of violence or suffering. The sensations themselves are spontaneous. They don't have origin. They don't even have form. And the identity or thoughts or beliefs are attempting to create a reference with those sensations. And that usually shows up as an emotion. But at a very fundamental level, it is identity basically saying, I like it, I don't like it, I accept it, I reject it. This is where we pay attention to the no. If it is uncomfortable, there's a no. That fundamental identity, when we no longer have a sense of no, then we have stepped into a space of pure allowance. We are not rejecting anything. Full acceptance. And when we accept everything, there is no effort against. And when we accept everything, there is no one here. There is just this.
Well, like, who is the identity fighting against with?
Well, what's even funnier about all this is that, of course, the identity belongs, and yes, the identity is this. The best we seem to be able to do is view it as a game. It's like the universe playing a game with itself. That's it. That's the most sense we can make of it. There's no way to make sense.
Like masturbation.
This is just a big circle jerk. Yeah. But it's not really about understanding, because that's the trick with the mind too. To know something has a finite value. This is infinite. It cannot be known. So then we just suddenly find ourselves in the inertia of this with no swimming upstream, no attempting to push against the flow of this river, so to speak, metaphorically. And we find ourselves in the inertia. We lose sense of time. We lose sense of self. And then we are just this. That is liberation. That is awakening. So just notice where the resistance arises, where the avoidance arises, where the hesitation arises, and just notice it. Don't have to do anything about it. That's the essence of stillness. If it's accompanying a sensation, rest with the sensation. That's just resting with presence. And then what you will see is that all these thoughts, essentially, we could treat it this way. Every thought wants to return to emptiness. It wants to become nothing again. So we just let it. We don't grab it and fight with it and struggle. I mean, you can. And also, that is this. That's a part of this. See? It's very akin to a game. Choose your own adventure until there is no choice. I know it gets confusing. You have a wisdom that you have contact with all the time. And I don't mean wisdom alone. It's here. No separation. Just allow the inertia of that to carry. No more effort against. Pure and utter stillness. No more compulsive or impulsive desire to do, to move away from, to reject. If we get to a place of self-trust, it's a bit of a misnomer. To trust oneself is actually not really what's happening. We just trust all of this as it is. And then all of a sudden we find there's no such thing as an internal world. And yes, there is an internal world until there's not. But you find it's just this. There is nothing opposing. There is no separation. There's no referencing anymore. It just is. It's that, that Buddhist story, Koan, about the monk pointing to the moon. It's not the moon. It's the tip of the finger. It's that direct. No interpretation, no assumption. And then we find ourselves playing in relative reality again. But it's a game. And we realize, oh, it's only a game when we realize we can stop playing. That's the trick. Because for the majority of human beings, we feel like we are doomed to this relative reality. And that along with the perception of suffering, sucks. But when you have a deeper realization, and deeper, that's a relative word, of course, but when you have the realization that, oh, this is hilarious. This is all a cosmic joke. There is nothing to be taken seriously or fight against. As if we have a choice anyway. It's not really like that. Seems that way, but it's not. But still, the words I say, the words that are coming out of this mouth have zero value. The only thing that matters is direct experience. Find out for yourself.
Yeah.
These are just words. They're sounds. We're just fancy apes making a bunch of sounds with cool haircuts or no hair at all. Just a bunch of fancy monkeys running around making sounds. The only truth is your truth. Just continuously making sure that that's true. Especially if there's something that you've discovered in the past, be willing and open to rediscover it again. Constantly. And then we step into this space that is very akin to beginner's mind. And oh my, there is nothing like being in that flow state. It's like watching puzzle pieces of this relative reality come together perfectly all the time. And it shows up in relative reality. Jobs, relationships, all these things are already here. The only obscuration is the belief that they are not here, that I am lacking, that this is somehow separate from the rest of this, that this needs to be protected from something out here. Maybe not. There's only one way to know. At least explore for yourself. That's all. So kind of like reading Rainbow. Don't take my word for it. Be willing to go there on your own. Engage curiosity, engage courage, engage creativity, freedom of expression, and engage intuition without needing to orient, reflect, or figure it out. And all of a sudden you find yourself deeply gone. Whew. Nothing like it. Gate. We'll talk more. I know we will. Nice to see you.
Always a pleasure. It's
Yeah.
good to, I know it's just words, but it really helps to guide, not like yourself, that you guide there is that way. If you want to go, that's good. If you don't, it's up to you,
Mm.
But at least there is someone with the sign, on the road.
Yeah, and it's just clues. I mean, to be honest, so much of this is just intuitive. I don't know anything. But in the moment, it's as if I am become an instrument, and it's almost as if you are speaking, the wisdom of you, the wisdom of this is speaking through this body. And so maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. Take it or leave it. It really actually doesn't matter either way. Because all that really exists is this right here. Nothing else. There is nothing else. There's no should. Nothing beyond, nothing more, nothing less. Just this, as it is.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll chat with you soon. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Leona.
So this leads me to my question, which is kind of for the sake of pure simplicity. Past stream entry and perhaps the first few fetters, what one pointer would you suggest to go completely all the way past the 10 fetters?
Fetter work is interesting because it seems like fetter work is really useful for people that have really hidden fixations. But the one thing I can point to, and this is the one pointer, that which is the most painful experience that you have in your existence, that is your guide. Whatever the deepest form of suffering that you currently have right here, right now, you jump all the way into that, that is the most direct path. Because this all comes around, is associated with perception of pain. At a very fundamental level, the identity is saying, I know I'm real because I feel pain. It's a feedback loop. Is it really pain? How do you know? The grand majority of mankind has no clue what pain is. They know what the resistance to pain feels like, and they also know what the avoidance to pain is, but they don't know what pain is. Because if you knew what pain was, there is no pain. That is the most powerful pointer I can give anyone. If you know pain, if you know suffering at any level, live there as deeply and fully as possible until you have no clue what it is any longer. Where's the reference point now? Ultimately, that is the final place of reference. Pain, the one place where there is a definite no. Oh, that hurts? Nope. Automatic reactive resistance or avoidance to that space. Well, prove to yourself that you can be with anything, including that which is being perceived as no, as pain. That will blast you through everything. And you find this with anyone that's had any kind of no self-realization. Pain is the guide. So to give a metaphor that has been given before, there's an old man sitting in a cottage in the middle of the desert. It's late at night. He's got a candle. He's reading a book of poetry, and he hears a pounding and a screaming at the front door. And his first reaction is, oh my God, someone is coming to rob me or kill me or who knows. And the pounding continues over and over, pounding, screaming, pounding. After about 20 minutes, the old man finally stands up. He inches toward the door, puts his hand on the doorknob, gently opens it a crack, looks through, and immediately recognizes a friend from childhood, 60 years ago, but immediately recognizes this person, throws the door wide open, and they embrace, and it's just this wash of catharsis. That is your metaphor for pain. When something is pounding at the door and screaming, the reactionary behavior is nope. But if we allow ourselves to, if it means you take a half step and a half step and a half step and slowly get closer to that door, you will eventually open the door, and then you get to find out what pain truly is. And it's definitely not associated with the thought, that's for sure. That's also fear. Any aspect of suffering that seems deep and untenable, and it can often have a sensational value to it that feels overwhelming, like it's going to kill you. There is no sensation that will kill you. Prove that to yourself. In a way, by allowing ourselves to be immersed and engaged in these sensations, in pain, in suffering, by allowing ourselves to be completely in the midst of that, we are somehow proving to the identity that we're going to be okay, and the identity begins to let itself go. Its whole job is to protect.
So how would you navigate your greatest pain? How would you go about being with it?
Well, the one commonality that seems extremely universal, and it's probably because identity is not an individual experience, it's a collective experience. We just think it's individual, is that it all associates itself with shame. Whatever part of you says I'm not lovable, whatever part of you says that I'm not good enough, whatever part of you says that I am broken, whatever part of you says that there's something wrong with me, or that you are, the world is a dirtier place with you in it, whatever the statement may be, that part of you is the last place of identity. The very fulcrum point of all identity is lacking a sense of this isn't good enough. And when this isn't good enough, it projects itself outward, and nothing out here is good enough. And we enter into a state of compensation and seeking to fill the hole of not being good enough, which equates itself to chasing our own tail perpetually. There's nothing we can get out here that will prove to us that we are good enough. We just have to know. So pay attention to that which is evaluating, pay attention to that which is seeking validation, pay attention to that which is assessing the situation, because that's still orienting itself around, this isn't good enough, this is not whole. Your value can never be determined. It just is intrinsic. Your truest nature can never change. It is just intrinsic. This is just this. So get close to that, and I think you'll find that it tends to have a very strong sensational value to it. It tends to be a pretty intense sensation right beneath the navel, and there will be thoughts that often will say, this is going to kill you. Oh my God, you got to stop. Do something, stop, get out of here. Stop it. Don't do it. Because somehow the identity knows that this is its last refuge. Shame. And I can tell you that you're not broken. I can tell you that there's nothing wrong with you. But that doesn't mean a damn thing. You must go into this undiscovered country on your own. And this is the equivalent of death. This is how you die into this moment. And there might be a lot of fear there. There might be a lot of sorrow. Firsthand, I can say, it was like experiencing the totality of all the shame of mankind from the dawn of time. That's the intensity of the experience. And this went on for months. It doesn't have to go on that long, but there was a resistance. There was, oh my God, this is going to kill me. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't want to die. And the second one was, please God, when is this going to end? Once I didn't care if it was going to kill me, once I didn't care if it was going to end, everything changed. Suffering no longer existed.
So to reach that point, did you, or to navigate through it, did you, when I say do anything, did you just simply be with it and allow whatever arose within it? Or how did you come to that point where it became so big that you had a total surrender towards it?
It was to step into a space of such allowance that no thought needed to accompany experience. It was to feel primarily. It was to feel sensationally all the time with everything. And recognize that where reaction was, because a reaction is just a resistance to a sensation. And all of a sudden, it was very clear that what was once subtle became so profound, it took the body, there was a dematerialization, it was an annihilation. And there was nothing left. So that's the most direct pointing. I know that can be intense. Start with feeling all the time. And like we say, it's just a gateway. But it is the most powerful gateway we have to presence. And presence and sensation will begin to reveal these secret thoughts. What wants to remain hidden? And sometimes you can play in an external way. What do you hide from others is often something not being being likely to be looked at home. So play with the reflection too. What wants to remain hidden? Vulnerability is an invitation for intimacy. Intimacy is an invitation for immediacy. And immediacy is all this is. Immediate. Impossible to predict, impossible to orient to. The rest is just a game.
I'm going deeply into the felt sense in the body, where all that kind of hidden dark stuff is. And it's really fruitful.
Pay attention to those thoughts that are wanting to fixate and reify a belief. Our primary beliefs, so before we go, because I don't have a ton of time, our primary beliefs lie right here as emotion. That is the primary belief. Sadness, anxiety, whatever. Things that we have to do something about. Impulsive, compulsive desires around. Once you start exploring that, you'll find sensation. Start exploring more sensation. Can you find the core of the sensation? Can you find the boundary of the sensation? It's not locatable. Now what? It can show up in a variety of ways. It can have a very intense Kundalini experience, or it can have a place of just completely dropping out. It doesn't actually matter how it is. I don't want to impart too much anticipation here. All I can say is explore the sensation that you have been avoiding since you were a young child. Explore it. That is the only thing that keeps identity hanging on. That is the obscuration. And you all know it quite well. Promise you that. Even if your mind is saying, I don't know. Wonder what it is. Those are thoughts. You know it. Feel it. Woo! All right. I have a session in 1 minute. I am so grateful for everyone. These questions were just phenomenal today. Thank you for all your sharing. I apologize I didn't get to that last question. Perhaps next time. Really, really genuinely appreciate you all being here. Thank you for sharing this space. Thank you for bringing this beautiful, palpable form of energy. And I'm just so grateful for you. And I will hopefully talk to you all very soon. Nice to see you. Oh, yeah, so much so. Thank you. Bye.